What up, guys? Welcome to Base Damage, and this week on Rogue Deck Reviews, we have one sent in to us again by Dragon235. Thanks a whole bunch, dude. This one is titled Nani Sore Imi Wakan't Brainstorm. Why can't I brainstorm? Which is a pun off of Maki from Love Live, where she says Nani Sore Imi Wakan't, something like that. It's basically a pun off one of her her catchphrase. I say catchphrase, but it's what a phrase she uses the most. Anyway, so turning this into a Weiss pun, I'm already giving you points on already creativity for this. So, but let's get right into this. Like I said, it's a Love Live deck, which is basically a Maki Waifu deck, but at the same time, because of Love Live and how many cards they have for their stuff, they're able to make essentially a waifu deck for every single one of these 9 girls because of how many cards there are. But because there's also so many cards, you have a lot of variation to stuff. So I do like to see the different, various different kinds of effects and combinations in there. So I personally have also made various waifu decks from different, for different Love Live characters, and at the same time, I realize that there's so many different ways you can make them. So definitely interested in seeing how this goes. I did take a once over just to see if I remembered a whole bunch of the cards from this, and I do remember a vast majority of the cards in here. I do have some tabs up here for cards that I didn't exactly remember the whole effects for, as well as some reference for a couple other things as well. So, but this is primarily blue with a splash of yellow, but I think basically every single one of the girls got yellow cards, because initially they split it into the first years were blue, the second years were red, and the third years were all green. But then they had a set where every single one of them was yellow, and like a trial deck where all of them were yellow in it as well. So it's kind of cool. But that's what basically for every combination for waifu decks like that, you can almost always have you probably can almost always have yellow cards in there. But anywho, let's get right into this, and obviously we got a whole bunch of, I see some SP art, some triple rare, and SR art, which is really nice, considering these are actually not considered Maki cards, but they have the art for her up there, which is pretty freaking cool. Anyway, let's jump right into this, starting with the level 0s. One copy of After School Songstress Maki. It's only like a 1k backup, but you can also play it on the field, because if you control another level 3, she gets +1 soul. So if you just so happen to need just to push for a little bit extra damage, which I'll show you something at the end of this, one of the level 3s later on actually can combo into this, which is really cool, to be able to have just that extra bit of damage to push for, which is very nice. So only 1 copy of it, and that's really all you need. Sometimes 2 copies, it's whatever, but that's really fine. 4 copies of, it says always no matter what. I can't remember what the English name for this is. So a lot of this is like the Japanese text up here, which is why I kind of pulled up the extra sidebars stuff. I think it's called Forever and Ever Maki. It's an oversized 4K. So what you have to do is, when you play it, you have to mill the top 2 cards of your deck. And if there's a climax amongst them in either of those 2 cards, she gets rested forcibly. But that's her only drawback, which is not that bad, personally. It's still an aggravation if it goes off, but that's whatever. So that's still not bad. For a 4K beat stick, that's actually kind of cool. 4 copies of the, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think of the Summer Festival Date Maki. And this is essentially the one of the Winter Moment Akatsukis of Love Live. There's 2. It's this, and there's a Nozomi that lets you do this. On play, you can pitch 1 card and look at up to 4 cards from the top of your deck. Hers was specifically, I'm actually going to have to pull this up, and I apologize for not doing this beforehand. That's what I thought. Okay, so I had to look at the effect again. Nozomi specifically grabs a green character, while Maki specifically grabs a blue character. Same stats as the Nozomi does the same stats as this. And I do not know if Red has one as far as OG Love Live. I actually am not certain if there was a Red version of this. But Yeah, and both of these came out of DX2 Volume 2, if I'm not mistaken, as well, like out of the same set. So that's pretty cool. And this is really good and really, really pricey. It was like the most expensive freaking SP in the entire set. It was insane. Congrats to my buddy Phil, or 8-Ball, some people might know him as. But this is actually really good. This is their Winter Moment Akatsuki, and you can get your combo pieces and whatnot set up off of this. Is really good. 4 copies of Bean Throwing Maki. And this has 2 effects. This is, you give 500 power to the middle center, your other middle center stage character, and a act ability where you can pay 2 stock and tap her to search your deck for a music character, kind of like Akashi from Kantai. So 4 copies of that. Maybe a little excessive on that, because I think when I tested out one particular deck, I only used like 2 or 3 of this, but at the same time, to each their own. This is actually still really good to get and be able to have for being able to get the combo pieces you need. So I mean, 4 is perfectly fine, but I don't know. To each their own. Now getting into these other ones, this is actually interesting. This one states it's like during your turn you get 1,000 power. I actually didn't have this one pulled up. I'm sorry. If you have 2 or more other music characters, this gets 1,000 power. Wait, actually, I think I did have this one pulled up. Yeah, I did have it pulled up. I'm so sorry. If you have 2 or more music characters, it gets 1,000 power. So it starts off as a 25 and becomes a 35. So it's pretty cool. I went ahead and jumped to that. There's 2 copies of that before talking about these. These are not named as Maki. This is Maid Outfit Muse and then Treasured Things Muse. Or Takara Monozu. Each of them have different effects, both really good. The Treasured Things Muse, which there was basically, this came in a trial deck, and the only way you could get like the different girls up there was if you pulled the triple rares of them, which is actually like really funny stories I could go into on some of that stuff, but I won't. But basically, there was a triple rare version for each of the girls. Otherwise, it came as a Honoka, and that was still, whatever. But either way, the effect is really good. When she becomes reversed, if the level of the battle opponent is 0 or lower, you may put that character into your opponent's stock. If so, put the bottom card of your opponent's stock into the waiting room. So, Stock Bomb, really good. The other one, which is the Maid Outfit, is when this is placed from hand to stage, you may put the top 3 cards of your library in the waiting room. When this is placed from the hand to the stage, you can also choose one of your level 1 or higher characters, and that character gets +1 soul for the turn. So being able to give extra soul, being able to mill a little bit more, just to, if you want to go ahead to refresh, it's whatever. Really good for that, and really interesting for getting up the extra soul. Once again, both of these are optional. Let's just choose one of your level 1 or higher characters. So it can't choose itself. The first effect is optional, but being able to still give like some extra soul and be able to push for a little bit extra damage is always good. I never like try to flack that in any way, shape, or form. But that's it for the level 0s. Let me go ahead and count. That's 4 is 12. 14 plus 4 is 18 level 0s. Getting into the level 1s. This first one actually has a change effect. It has 2 effects. One, it's a 1500 backup, but if you do play her at the beginning of your climax phase, you can pay 2 stock and put this card into your clock to choose a card named Maki Nishikino in your waiting room and put it on the same position that this was on. Sadly, this effect does not actually come into play into this deck because it's a particular... Let me just double check, make certain I don't see it. I do not see it, making certain that I don't see it. It doesn't say a card with Maki Nishikino in its name. It just specifically states Maki Nishikino, which is this card above it. Convenient placing. Thank you, Bushiroad. Which is like a 1,000 assist in front and a pay 1 rest to give a buff. But this isn't actually run in the deck, which you could, but it's not worth it. Like, not worth taking the damage for this. So this is basically just used as a 1500 backup because of the wording on this. But either way, 1500 backups are still good, so it's whatever. To each their own. Next is, that's our Miracle Maki. She gets plus 500 power for each of your other level 0s on the field, which is probably why this is a higher level 0 count to begin with, and probably why there's more copies of this, because that means you can pop 2 of these back row and place this in the middle center. One, these are giving 1,000 power to that middle center, And then just for these being level 0s, she gets an additional 1,000 power total. And that's if you don't play other level 0s. That's whatever. Like if you end up playing this to give more soul, it would also give more power at the same time. So that's really cool. So that combos with that way very interestingly, and that's probably why this has so many copies of in the deck. So that's understandable at that point. I can completely understand it. 3 copies of that, 4 copies of We're a Single White Maki Nishikina. Now, the We're a Single White Climax has literally 9 different arts, and between those are 3 different colors. No yellows. But it all works for the name, regardless if you play the salvage one or if you play the gold bar one. It doesn't matter, it still goes off. And in this one, I believe he's specifically running the 1K1 pants trigger. So that's perfectly fine. So for this, it has 2 effects. One is the climax combo. When the battle opponent becomes reversed, you can look at up to 4 cards from the top of your deck, add a music character amongst them to your hand, and then you can choose one of your other characters and give that character 1,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. So being able to get a buff like that, especially if you have multiples of these on the field, for that combo to be able to go ahead and get the mill and whatnot is really good. As well as she has a secondary ability where you can tap a character to give her 1,000 power until end of turn. So being able to, once again, if you decide not to use the tap effects for the search, you can tap these, in the back row or whatever, and then give additional buffs, which is always good. So being able to get a little bit bigger, especially if you do that one time. She's a 55, and then you play the climax, which would turn her into a 6,500. So still really good like that. And if you have multiple copies of her, you can start giving 1,000 power buffs here and there, and those last for a bit, which is really cool. So really good Advantage engine. Just got so expensive in English, I swear. It was like $20 a piece, I think, when it released or something like that. Just personal opinion, that's whatever. I still really like this deck so far. Sunny Day Song Maki has 2 effects as well. It's a Clock Encore and the ability that if she's facing a cost 0 or lower character, so that can count for most of your opponent's level 1s. Not many people run cost 1 level 1s as far as some of the higher tier, I say higher tier, not saying that this is low tier by any means of the imagination, but some of the stuff you see played more often does not have cost to it for the level 1s. And if she does, she gets plus 1 level and 3,500 power, because I remember the math for that brings her out to a 8,000 cost 1, which is insane. At that point, also a level 2. So this also just gets around level 1 reversers all day, which is hilarious. So, and then the Clock Encore on top of that is just kind of a little bit extra spice to it, because that makes it so if you're able to summon other characters to get over cost 1 characters they do play, you can still just keep these on field and use them over and over and over again. So that's really cool. There was another level 1 that had a Clock Encore with a Taige level buff or something like that. It was for every other music character she got 500 power. I'm surprised I actually didn't see that in here, because it was another Maki as well. But at the same time, probably had to keep room for all the other level 1s that you need for this, because that's actually really powerful, and this for your climax combo you definitely have to have 4 copies of. So I can understand if you didn't have the room. That's perfectly fine. Next is Maki in Sundress. That was your level 1, so that's 12 level 1s. And then 2 level 2s. This is a 2,500 backup, and when you play it, if all of your characters are Maki, you can blind stock 1. I think I'm remembering that properly. Yeah, you can blind stock 1. So, ain't no problem with that. It pays for itself. Just depends on the blind stock as well, because you don't want that to be a climax, but hey, that's whatever. And then Sweets Fairy Maki, which is, I had to pull up because I could not remember exactly, which that was also a SR. When it attacks, if the level of the character opposite is 3 or higher, she gets 3,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. So she starts off as a 7-5, and she pokes to level 3, she becomes a 10-5 before anything else. That's fucking amazing, actually. being able to get rid of, especially if your opponent has early plays, being able to go ahead and pound those early plays and then stay big, which is just really powerful. Admittedly, she doesn't have any other effects outside of that, but that's whatever. That's perfectly fine. So that's the only level 2s. No events, it looks like, and now we're getting into the level 3s. I remember all of these for the most part, except this one, which is the first-year student at Otonokizaka Academy, Maki. It's a 3-2. If there are 6 or more climax cards in your waiting room, this gets -1 level in hand. So it is an early play. It gets 500 power for each of your other music characters, so she could become an 11,000 total. And then when this is placed from hand to stage, you can draw up to 2 cards and then discard 1 card. So that hand filtering to get your combo pieces off is really nice. So 4 copies of that, and that's completely understandable because you want to be able to get those on the field, and I like the SR art for that. Is actually really nice. It goes back to like their original art that the Love Live characters used for those, which you don't see used at all anymore. I mean, sure, anyway, that's before I get into speeches about anime and whatnot. Anyway, so 3 copies of this is Happy Maker Maki, which SP for that. Very nice, dude. 2 effects. This was on play, you can heal 1, and then during your opponent's turn, she gets a buff. I think it's 500 power for each of your opponents. No, for each of your 500 power during your opponent's turn for each of your other music characters. During your opponent's turn for each of your. Yep, I was right, and I was right on the heal. Yay! Billy remembered stuff. So let me go ahead and X out of these while I'm at it. And then the last one, so 3 copies of that. This actually ties into this, and this ties into another combo I was talking about earlier. Best Clothing Maki is 2 effects. 1, on play, you can search your deck for a music character, which is really, really nice. So because this combos with Happy Maker for the second ability, which we'll get to in a second, you can specifically use this to search for the Happy Maker. Either that, or it would also be just, cute little thing you can do is specifically search for your copy of the After School Songstress Maki to be able to, you play this, search for that level 0, then play the level 0, and then you have another 2 soul on the field to be able to try to poke for more damage. It's just a neat little thing you could do. That's really the only reason, unless you focused around doing that, that would be the only reason to really include more copies of that level 0 Maki, but that's not the goal of this. The goal of this is to get the Happy Maker, because her second ability, when the battle opponent becomes reversed, if the Happy Maker Maki is on your field, you can pay a cost. I think it's pay 1, pitch 1. I'm going to pull it up just in case. And if you do pay the cost, you can heal 1. I was correct. So up to once per turn, when the battle opponent becomes reversed, pay 1 and pitch 1 and heal 1, which is really, really cool and actually really interesting because I've seen a lot of the heal stuff you see is on play heals, not like additional requires another character on the field. But that's like you play this, or you play this, search for that, play this, heal 1, swing with this, pay the cost, and then heal 1 as well. Admittedly, that all just hurts. Hurts if your opponent has heal attacks or whatever, but that's not even really applicable right here. This is Rogue Deck Reviews. We shouldn't be counting meta contai, right? Anyway, and then lastly is I know it says it's secret here, but it's the We Are Single Light Climax, which is the 165B, and that is 165B is the Maki one, which is the 1K1 Pants trigger. So I had to pull the art up there for people to be able to see there, dude. But yeah, really awesome. And the last one is the Hello Count the Stars Climax, which is a blue stock from Waiting Room and +1 soul to all of your characters, which, 3/4 of the deck is blue, so you're going to get that in one way, shape, or form. Getting the extra stock like that's really good, and being able to still get a whole bunch of soul across the board is also still really, really powerful. And really at that point, with the pros outweighing the cons of the 2 soul crit there, is minimal. The 2 soul crit is minimal at that point with the other stuff that this provides you. This climax combos with a particular level 0 Ren. It is the Hello Count the Stars Ren, but that's not put in here because it's Maki Waifu. But it has Maki up here, so yay! as opposed to like Nap Time Maki and has like a level 0 combo or whatever. Anyway, one, waifu decks are always welcome onto Rogue Deck Reviews, because that's the kind of stuff I like to see people do, is try to make those types of decks, especially for sets that have so many cards and so many options that you can do. It's really nice to be able to see those and see which routes people take with their combinations. And really, there's no right or wrong way to that. Like, there's always like preferred builds, but there's never in my opinion, never a wrong build when it comes to that. Unless you just completely fuck up and just like completely screw up in the deck building process and you have like no climax combos or whatever. That's just, you know, you as a player needing to take a step back and then look at the deck again and go, okay, what can I change to make it better? But in this case, I don't look at it that way. I say, waifu deck, awesome, dude. Like, straight up awesome. And also coming from a set that I have used quite a bit and I actually very much enjoy. Between the Maki cards, Honoka, Nico, shoutouts to Joe Schmo there. Yes, to each their own, and very welcome to see this. And this definitely gets the Kool-Aid seal of approval, bruh. Thank you very much for sending this in, and thank you to everyone who decided to stay with me rambling on this long. If you want to, please subscribe, and if you don't want to subscribe, hey, just thanks for sticking around this long. It's all good. With that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now, and we will see y'all on the flip side. Peace.